To discuss the labour strike, I'm joined live on the news by lawyer and managing partner Bayo, Sanni. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Glad to be here too.
Let me start by asking if you think organized labour followed mandatory procedures outlined in the Trade Dispute Act for notifying the government. Thank
you very much. You see, I read the statement of the Attorney General while he said the same thing that you just said now, that Labour did not give the mandatory 15 days notice before embarking on a strike action. And sincerely speaking, I feel that that statement is unfair to the Nigerian Labour Congress and Nigerians at large, as a whole. Why did I say so? Look, apart from... Apologies for causing you short there, Mr. Sanni. Just to notify our viewers, we have another guest joining us live, and that is Opeoluwa Dapo-Thomas, who is an international financial analyst. Glad to have you join us as well, Mr. Dapo-Thomas. Back to you regarding the strike. So when we're talking about, Labour has embarked on industrial action now, that's the strike action, and we're talking about 15 days notice. That shows that the Attorney General or the federal government is prioritizing technicality over the substantive issue here. Okay? What are the substantive issues? We're talking about the welfare of workers. We're talking about federal government's commitment to the palliative measures and several other measures to cushion the effect of several policies. Although policies in the right direction, but policies that have harsh effect on Nigerians as a whole. Now, if you're now saying that Labour did not give this 15 days mandatory notice before embarking on strike, you are also ignoring their own right of freedom of association, their freedom of expression. And this strike is one of the measures to put pressure on federal government to do the right thing.
In the light of what you have said, how would you respond to criticisms of those saying that the strike is illegal for reasons of not following the TDA procedures?
TDA procedures. Are we looking at only TDA procedures here now? We are not. As a matter of fact, if they are talking about this notice, they're probably talking about Section 46 of the TDA. And Section 46 of TDA did not outrightly make it mandatory for Labour to give this notice. It says that they should follow the procedure, all right? And if you also look at this procedure that we're talking about, they are also in violation of several international labour laws and charters, which Nigeria has ratified as a member state. So why are we now reading one part and we are leaving out the other part? Do you understand? The notice should not be taken in isolation. And even that is also, that even shows you, it tells you that it's a clear technical argument here. Because we didn't start from that angle. We didn't start from that point. We didn't start this year. They've been on this issue since last year, as far back as last year. So if you're talking about notice, if you have looked at the scenarios that have played out since subsidy was removed and Labour's reaction to the removal of subsidy, all in the interest of protecting their members, then we should say that several notices have been given.
Let me take a moment to move to our next guest, Mr. Opeoluwa. Let me ask what you think the economic consequences of prolonged industrial action may be, and also the impacts on the broader economy.
It will be affected, and that's something that we have to actually acknowledge. Number one, because of the policies the government has done in the last year, obviously we're expecting GDP to slow down because consumers and expenditure will go down, purchasing power will go down. So if you factor that, and then you are putting in indefinite strike actions, and you are turning off the national grid, and you're putting off people from going to work, it will have a consequence on government revenues, economic outputs, and those are things that we have to look out for. So it's going to actually affect productivity, and when productivity is affected, it will cause job losses. So for example, if companies are not making sales, they can have to lay off people and say, okay, you're not coming to work, might as well lay you off. And those are things that we have to look at. It can also affect movement, affect lives. There are people in hospitals as well that obviously need this power supply. So it really depends on, from an economic standpoint, not bulging to labor's demands and labor extending this indefinite strike would have an effect on the economy, which would obviously see in the GDP figures later on.
Now, talking in the light of all you have mentioned, let's talk about solutions now. In what ways can the federal government and also workers negotiate to resolve disputes and also avoid industrial action? And what alternative dispute mechanisms would you recommend?
I mean, the Minister of Information has already said they could come back to the negotiation table. It's a tripartite committee, federal government, private sector, labor. Private sector and federal government say this is what they can afford. And this is based on the economic realities of the country. Now, people need to understand what that means. At 30,000 naira, some states were not able to afford the minimum wage, or they even did not pay the minimum wage. Now, government saying 60,000 naira means that this is what they can afford. Now, labor has to come to the drawing table and have some compromise. You can't sit at 400,000 or whatever figures they've called out and expect government to come and meet you there, because government cannot afford it. There's nothing, at the end of the day, the interest of the government is to do what's best for the nation. And what's best for the nation would not be taken to 400,000 because of the inflationary pressures or the inflationary impact of high wages that are not tailored with productivity and revenue would do to the economy. And government is not going to borrow money to fund resources. People also need to understand that there are different stakeholders in this. You have government workers, you have private sector workers. So telling me to come up with a minimum wage, and you have state workers, telling me to come up with a minimum wage that would only affect a tiny percentage, or that would only be implemented by a tiny percentage of the people, it's not going to be productive for the country. If you look at the National Minimum Wage Act, and we have a lawyer in the house who can obviously support what I'm saying, it is compulsory for everyone to pay the minimum wage. I don't think in your own discretion as private sector, you can decide to pay something less than that. I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong. I know that there are different exemptions in the statutes that obviously can make someone earn less than the minimum wage.
Let me quickly shift to Mr. Sanni, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for your perspective. Let me come to you. Let's get your legal perspective. What are the available mechanisms for resolving disputes like this between the government and then organized labor? What's the way out?
You see, usually when we are talking about our alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, the labor law already prescribed the procedure, all right, which the government, that they have put into place since last year. That is negotiation, or you go up the route of mediation, all right? By law, the minister, that's even the role, that's the function of the Minister of Labor. You understand? The federal government standing as an employer on one side, labor union standing as the other party, standing together, that's the organized labor on the other side, while the Minister of Labor stays in between as maybe that's when we should even look at some of the amendments or some of the things we need to review about our laws. Because if you have the Minister of Labor, who is also an appointee of the federal government, playing the role of a mediator, do you understand? There's already a bias there, okay? But the issue we have in Nigeria is not really about the mechanisms. It's the sincerity of purpose, all right? When you come to a table, you come to the negotiation table, how sincere are you? And we shouldn't look at this dispute on one side. It is a dispute, trade dispute, which shows that there's party A, there's party B. And we shouldn't look at it from one side. That's why the law says that hear the other side, or the trem partems. We should hear the other side. Do you understand? We shouldn't look at the effect of one party's reaction on one party alone. You get what I'm saying? If you look at it that, okay, this will cause a lot of hardship on federal government's revenue. I mean, this will have an adverse effect on federal government's revenue. This will have an adverse effect on the economy as a whole. That's what people on the federal government side are saying. What about the members of the Nigerian Labour Congress? Human beings. What are they doing? You understand? So we should look at it also from their own angle. You get what I'm saying? The right mechanism is in place. That is negotiation. All right? But the sincerity of purpose is what is absent here.
And that's a fine place to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time on the news. Bayo, Sanni, lawyer and managing partner, Bayo and Co. And as well as our guest that joined us live on the news, and that's the international financial analyst, Opeoluwa Dapo-Thomas. Thank you both, gentlemen, for your time on the news. You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us.